Hi everybody. Okay, I'm going to try again. So welcome back. And for today's lesson, we're going to focus on some business English. This is a business webinar, example from the Business English webinar. And today I want to show you a video from a CEO from obviously the company Starbucks is well known and very famous. So this is an interview with the CEO of Starbucks, and I think it was recorded last week. So we're going to listen to the video and try to catch some of the difficult expressions, difficult vocabulary, very business specific vocabulary. And at the same time, in the middle screen, you can see here, we have the transcript. So we have the script word for word, exactly what was said in the video. For example, it begins here. The interviewer is Jim Cramer. I think he's very, very well known in America in business circles, in the business field, and the company or the television channel is CNBC. So he is the interviewer, and you can see here, word for word, the explanation of what he says in the video. And Kevin Johnson is the CEO of Starbucks, so you can see exactly what Kevin says in here in the text. So we have a few possibilities, and the first possibility is just to watch and listen first for a few minutes, and then after look at the text. So that's the first possibility. The second possibility is to watch the script at the same time as the video, but I think we will wait until the third time to watch the script and the video together. So first I'm going to play the video for a few seconds, a few minutes maybe, and then try to let you understand and catch the vocabulary, catch the expressions, and hopefully you can understand everything. So fingers crossed with the connection, because sometimes when we play an extra video, it requires a lot more energy and data from the Wi-Fi, and sometimes it's a big problem. So hopefully we will be able to watch this video okay, and hopefully it will not really require too much energy or too much data from the Wi-Fi. So let's see, I'm just going to press play.
Great company that was hurt because of Corona. We're going to go over that. Starbucks. It's falling at the beginning of the day, despite, I'd say, an extraordinary earnings beat, including a number that I never thought, U.S. comps of 6%. You go back a few years, we thought that was not possible. So let's bring in Starbucks CEO Kevin Johnson on from Seattle. Kevin, there's a key line in your comps call, and the line is you would have taken numbers up if it were not for the obvious. So could you walk us through what could have been and what was?
Well, Jim, good morning. We just came off of one of the strongest holiday quarters in the history of Starbucks. And if you look at what we delivered in this last quarter, certainly a 5% growth in same-store sales globally, led by our U.S. U.S. grew 6% comp with 3% growth in customer occasions, in traffic. China grew 3% in same-store comparable last quarter with 1% growth in traffic. So, our retail business is really firing on all cylinders. We grew net new stores by 6%. Our channels business grew 5%. You put that all together, we had one of the strongest holiday quarters in the history of the company. Customer confidence and customer connection scores are at an all-time high. Beverage innovation accounted for 5 points of that 6-point comp growth in the U.S., and we grew our digital active rewards members by 16% to 18.9 million. So coming off of Q1, that momentum just continues to build. Now, as you point out, we're now managing a very dynamic situation in China related to the coronavirus. And, we've been in China for 20 years. We realize that this is a temporary issue that we've got to deal with. And we're doing it responsibly. We're doing it by prioritizing the health and well-being of our Starbucks partners. And we're working closely with local health officials and government to help ensure that they're able to contain the virus and that we can get through this quickly and get on with it. But coming off a very, very powerful quarter, we had a beat and we were intending to raise, but given the coronavirus, we felt it was in the best interest to really better understand the implications of that. And as we do, we're going to be transparent with our investors.
I don't mean to dwell
Okay, very, very good. So I just disappeared for a few seconds and I'm behind the screen. So I just wrote a few very important expressions. Not too difficult, I don't think, to understand. So let me bring the script here beside me. Sorry, that's the Facebook selection. So let me put the script here, and at the same time I'll reduce the size of the video. So not too difficult in my opinion. I hope you understood him very well. I hope he was easy to follow. I think, yes, he spoke very clearly, he spoke very well, and not too difficult with this man, I think, to understand. Maybe the first man, the interviewer, was a little bit more difficult to understand in relation to English. But here I'm going to show you the first script. So Jim says lettuce, which is obviously very typical. Well, excuse me, because we have another vegetable which we say lettuce, which is different. Lettuce is letuga in Espanol, but in English he says let us, which is like permit us, allow us. Bring in is like to introduce. So if you bring somebody into the conversation, you bring somebody into the room, it's to introduce somebody. And exactly here on the video, let me bring in, let me introduce, let me present you Starbucks Kevin Johnson on from Seattle. Okay, Kevin, there is a key line in your conference call. So key is just clave, no problem. We say key, I mean, we use it a lot in English, the key adjective, clave in Espanol. So there's a key line or sentence in your speech or discurso. So it's in your speech, but really here it's in your conference call. Okay, and a conference call is the typical vocabulary we use in business when you make a video call to speak to a lot of executives, a lot of journalists. It's a conference call. We have a press conference, which is a little bit different. A press conference is when you sit in front of the media, in front of the television, in front of the journalists, and the journalists ask you questions. This is a press conference, but a conference call is more with the shareholders, and the shareholders are como accionistas. So the conference call is specifically with the shareholders. So that's the difference between a press conference and a conference call. So in this situation, there's a key line, an important line, sentence in your conference call, and the line is you would have taken, very, very advanced structure, hypothetical, you would have taken the numbers up. So I suppose he is speaking in relation to the numbers, the financial numbers, the sales, the key sales figures. Up is increasing. If it were not for, so this is very, very good example of the conditional. So you would have taken numbers up if it were not for. Very, very difficult, very good example of the conditional in English. For example, I would have gone to Ibiza if it were not for the pandemic. I would have eaten some chocolate if it were not for my my health. Okay, so just a typical structure we use very, very frequently, very, very advanced and very, very good quality grammar. Okay, so could you walk us through? So this is difficult. There is a phrasal verb to walk me through or to walk you through, and basically the significance is to explain. So please, can you walk me through the exercise? Can you walk me through the instructions? And the significance is basically, can you explain in detail, very slowly, very clearly? That's the significance of walk, because it is possible to say run through, and that's a little bit quicker. So I will run through the instructions, and that means I will explain the instructions probably a little bit quicker. So very interesting difference between walk through and run through. Okay, so they are very similar about explanation, but here it's just to explain us very slowly, very simply, very easily. And remember, through is a través. What could have been, so really, really good advanced grammar. What could have been, again, it's hypothetical situation, and what was, so what actually was the reality, and what you could have done, what was the opportunity that you missed, and what was the reality. So very interesting paragraph. Of course, the presenter is not so aware of the difficulty of the language he is using because he's a business reporter, he's not an English teacher. But it's a very good example of difficult, very advanced structures in grammar. And if you, the students, are preparing for exams, this type of vocabulary, this type of grammar is very impressive if you use it in an exam, for example. And then Kevin responds, he says, well, Jim, good morning. Okay, no problem. You know, sabes, we just came off, that's very difficult. So we just came off, and you can see here, we just came off okay, so to come off is maybe your holidays. So for example, I am on holidays now, but next week I will return to work and I will be coming off my holidays. That's possible. It's also possible with medicine. At the moment I am taking medicine, but next week I am coming off my medicine. So it means stopping or maybe coming from. So they're the two possibilities. And this situation, he speaks about the holiday quarter. Also, a quarter is important in English because it's a business quarter. We have quarter one, quarter two, quarter three. Possibly in Spanish, you maybe say trimestre. I don't know for sure because in school in Spain you say trimestre, but in English we say a semester. So you need to be a little bit careful the difference in English between semester and trimester. Semester is more typical and trimester I think is more typical in Spanish possibly, but in business we say a business quarter. So we're just leaving this last business quarter. We're coming here from, off of, a bit difficult. That's the most difficult in the introduction. We just came, and it's the past irregular of one of the strong. Remember, this structure, one of, it's necessary in the plural. Okay, so one of the best days, one of the biggest matches in sports. Okay, so it's necessary plural with this structure, one of. Okay, and here we have one of, and it's in plural, quarters. In the history, again, the same as this morning, the difference between story and history is very important. So here it's the history. It's like the subject that you study in school. You study history, asignatura, but the story is maybe a short story you tell your friends. So in this situation, it's the history of Starbucks in the past, the record of Starbucks. And if you look at typical preposition, look at what we delivered. So subject, the verb in the past simple. In, again, is for the quarter, in this last quarter. So it's because it's here in this quarter, in that quarter, in these quarters, in those quarters. Again, you need to be clear with the difference between this, that, these, and those. So very simple, very fluent, and this man is obviously not thinking too much about his structures. He's obviously just speaking naturally. Certainly, obviously, clearly, surely, a 5% growth. So this is important as well because the verb is to grow and the substantive is the growth. Okay, and grow up, as we always say, is like to mature. So it's a bit different. To grow in the company is perfect. To develop, to progress, to advance in the company. But grow up is more typical just with people in relation to mature. So if you need to grow up, you need to start behaving more responsibly. And to grow up is the phrasal verb we use in that situation. But the substantivo is the growth. Okay, and here it's a 5% growth in same store sales. That's a very typical business term, business expression. So that means you have the same number, the same quantity of stores, of cafes, of shops this year compared to last year. And when you consider the same numbers, your sales, the money that you have earned is higher in same store sales. That's my interpretation. It's a very typical business expression. And here it's a 5% growth with no new shops. It's the same quantity of stores and they have still, todavía, they have a 5% growth. Globally, internationally, around the world, led by is very, very important English. Very simple, very common. The verb is to lead, like liderar, okay? And we say to lead the way. You can say to lead the market. And there are a few other possibilities as well. Of course, the person or the company is a leader, but we have a structure in English, lead to, for example, eating a lot of chocolate leads to bad health. So it's the consequences. Eating a lot of chocolate leads to bad health, and that structure is very, very important. And the past is led to. Okay, past led to, very important. So here, this is the past. It was led, directed, controlled. Also, we have a verb to steer, which is very, very interesting. The verb to steer is like to direct or to drive. And it could be used in this situation by our US. And US grew, again, that's the verb to grow, but it's the past irregular. The US grew 6%. Comp, I don't know exactly what he means here by comp. I'm not sure. It could be complementary, maybe. With 3% growth, again, substantivo, th, in customer cases, in traffic. So China grew, again, past irregular. So you can see the verb to grow is very important in business. 3% in same store, comparable or comparable last quarter with. So comparable is typical with the preposition with. You compare with. 1% growth in traffic. So you know a retail business is really firing on all cylinders. This is the best expression from the paragraph. This is the most colorful and the best and maybe most difficult expression to understand. So the verb is to fire, and it's typical with the pistol. You fire a gun, you fire a pistol. Okay, so to fire a gun, which in Spanish is pistol, you can fire an employee. So if the worker is not performing very good and the worker is not doing the job, you can fire the worker, which means the worker loses the job. You can also say to sack the worker. So the verb to fire is very, very important. A cylinder, I think, is related to a factory. So if you have a machine with a lot of cylinders, and a cylinder is maybe from the engine. So I think the engine has different cylinders, and if the cylinder is firing, like the action for the pistol, it's functioning. So the expression is very famous. If the machine is firing on all cylinders, it means every part of the machine is functioning to the limit, is functioning perfectly. So we use this expression in lots of situations. It could be for personal, it could be for business. I can try to think of a few examples. So you're working today, for example, your hobby is art, and you start to draw a painting, and you can say, I'm firing on all cylinders. I'm really functioning very well. I'm painting very well. I have a lot of energy. I'm feeling motivated. I'm firing on all cylinders. Very famous expression. Very good. I don't expect people learning English to understand that expression, but it is a very common expression and very, very good. Again, the verb to grow, again, it's so common in this text. It's the past irregular. Net new stores. So in business, the word net is very famous. So in relation to salary, you have two possibilities. You can say gross salary, or you can say net salary, or net income, or gross income. Income is like ingreso. So the gross salary is the money that you receive before it's necessary to pay tax. Okay, so when you pay tax, the money that you have after you pay tax, impuestos, this is your net salary. Okay, so there's a big, big, big difference between gross and net salary. So if you're negotiating your salary with the company, it's very important you specify if it is gross salary or if it is net salary. Again, salary is the money that you have after you pay taxes. Okay, so here it's specific in business, and he says, I just lost here, we grew net new stores by 6%. So I think the significance is they did not lose any store. Well, maybe they lost 2, but they constructed maybe 5 more. So they have an increase in total. Our channels business, it could be Facebook, it could be social media. This is the channel maybe that he speaks about. It could be YouTube, and where they sell products on different, like social media. I think that's the significance here. The channels business grew by 5%, and then the final expression is You put that all together, and the significance is to combine. So if you put it all together, you combine. It's just a very alternative way to say to combine. You add everything together. You know, we had one of, again, the structure quarters in the histories of the company. Again, you know, which is sabes in Espanol, which is probably typical in conversation. Customer confidence. That's another business expression. So customer confidence is a typical expression. Customer loyalty, customer faith, customer trust. You have a lot of good words here that are important in English. And connection, store, customer connection, scores. So a score is like una marca, the score in the exam, the result, the notes. Are, at is the preposition for location in time, at the beginning, at the middle, at the end. So in relation to time, at 6 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, all time high. So that's a very, very famous expression, at an all time high. And that means it has never been this high before. So it's a record high at the moment, okay? Beverage is very, very important and common word in English, but a lot of people maybe don't know the significance. A beverage is related to beber in Espanol, to drink. So a beverage is a drink. So after the meeting, after the party, you need a beverage. A beverage is a drink to maybe feel refreshed. And sometimes in English we say a refreshment as well. So a beverage is a type of drink. And here we say innovation in relation to the beverage, in relation to the drink, accounted for. So that means totaled, equaled 5 points of that 6-point comp growth. Again, I don't know the specific intention here of comp, but the growth is the substantivo in for the country, in Ireland, in Spain, in England, in the United States. Again, grew our digital active rewards members. So you need to be clear the difference between a reward and an award. So a reward is like recompensar. When you do something, you receive a reward to say thank you. But in a competition, like a prize, you receive an award. So yes, there is a very important difference between a reward and an award. As I said, an award is like un premio, a prize, okay, and a reward is more recompensar. Okay, so the child does something good and you give the child a reward to say well done and to say thank you. Okay, again, coming off of quarter one, which is the same as before, like leaving, just entering the new stage from the past stage, that momentum continues to build. So the verb that we use with momentum is typically to build, to grow momentum, to build momentum. Now, as you point out, okay, so the verb to point out, I think, is apuntar. And here you can see in the text. So to point out is like to identify. And that's the significance really to apuntar, I think in Espanol, to point out, to identify, to focus on something. So when you point out the problem, you point out the issue, you identify and you focus the issue, okay? Focus on the issue. And here we see, as you pointed out, we're now managing a very dynamic situation in China related to the coronavirus. And you know, we have been in China for 20 years. We realize this is a temporary issue or problem, asunto in Espanol, that we have got. So we have to, and we have the obligation, we have got to, okay, that's typical as well. I have got to clean my car, and the significance is obligation. I have the obligation, I must clean the car. So here we have got to deal with, we have the obligation to deal with, to manage, and we're doing it. So the pronoun, we're doing it responsibly, and that's the adverb as well. Here we have the verb to prioritize, which is a little bit tricky, especially for pronunciation. So the verb is to prioritize. I think in the UK, possibly it's the S, and in the United States, it is with the Z, one or the other. I always confuse the two. And I think because this text is from the UK, the US, I think the US is with the S. Well, I need to double check, but that's the reason we have the Z and the E and the S. One is from the United Kingdom and the other one is from the United States. The health and well-being, so it's the well-being of the company, and we're working closely with local officials and government to help ensure. So here we have to be careful and very aware of the difference between assure, ensure, insure. Okay, they are very, very different and very important. So to assure is like to guarantee or to promise. So I assure you this is a good video. I promise you, I guarantee you this is good quality English. To ensure is to make certain or to make sure. So when you leave your house, ensure the door is closed. So make certain, make sure the door is closed. So that's to ensure. The next one is insure, which is related to business. You can insure your car, you can insure your life, you can insure your possessions. So it's the company that you pay the money and they cover the cost if you have damage to your car. That's insurance. Okay, very different contexts, but very, very important differences. Okay, that they're able to contain the virus and that we can get through this. So that's a phrasal verb, to get through, has the significance to survive. Okay, to survive, to pass the situation, to get through the situation, to get through a problem. It is possible as well to get over this problem, very, very similar to preposition over or the preposition through, quickly, and get on with it. So to get on with is maybe to continue your job, to continue your work. So to get on with your work has the significance to continue. Okay, coming up is in the future. So next week coming up, we have a big event, etc. A very powerful quarter. You know, we had a beat. I don't know what he means here, a beat, and we were intending to, okay, so I think in business you can say we had a beat, which is a level, maybe a level, an objective, a goal, a target. I have never heard it before in business, but of course he's the CEO of Starbucks, so it could be a word that is used nowadays. So a target, an objective, a goal. We have a beat, or we had in the past, and we were intending. That is the verb to intend in the past continuous, to raise. And again, you always need to be careful the difference between to raise and to rise. So I raise my hand, I raise a question, introduce a question, I raise an objection. So raise is typical for raise a question, raise an objection, raise an hand, and you can raise a child as well. So to raise a child means to educate, to help the child to grow, to try to feed, to give money, to give love, to give a house, to give everything. So you raise a child, that's very typical. But rise, we say the sun rises at 6 a.m. We say the price rises at 10 p.m. So that's very, very important as well. And also for temperature. So the temperature rises after the morning. Okay, but given the coronavirus, we felt, again, the verb to feel. So here's a little tip. You need to be clear the difference between the verb to feel and to fall. So the verb to feel in the past is felt, and the verb to fall in the past is fell. So this is a trap. A lot of people make this error, and you need to be very, very clear. The verb in Spanish to feel is sentir, and the verb in Spanish to fall is caer. Okay, so here it is, we felt, it's our sentiment, it's our feeling. It was in the best interest to really understand the implications of that. And as we do, so do is related to the verb understand. We do understand, it's a bit difficult here, but as we do understand, it's a substitution or a reference to the previous verb understand. We're going to be transparent with our investors. And finally, the verb is to invest, and we say an investment. Okay, and it's typical, the preposition to invest in. Okay, now I'm going to show you the next question with Jim, and I'm going to give you a tip and give you advice. The first word is very important to dwell on, so you need to pay attention to this significance. To dwell on, we say a dwelling. Okay, and for example, I dwell in Ireland. The significance is I live in Ireland. Okay, so if you dwell somewhere, the significance is you live somewhere. Okay, but if you dwell on something, that means you continuously think about this thought, you continuously think about the situation, you stay on the situation, and maybe it's negative. You need to continue, you need to stop thinking about the situation, and you need to move on. So stop dwelling on the situation means stop thinking about the situation too much. Okay, so that's very, very famous, very, very important, and he uses it twice here. The first time, dwell on, and dwelling on it again. Okay, you've closed half your stores. Okay, that's the substantivo, the half, but also the verb is to halve. Okay, and that means when you make something into two different parts. But here the substantivo is the half. Okay, one, why not close all the stores? Because you care tremendously, but not just for the workers, the baristas, but the families. But two, you have got, you have. That's difficult to explain, but the significance is you have. And I think it's very American. I have got one bicycle and one dog. Okay, that is the same significance as I have one bicycle and one dog. Okay, so I think it's very American. I have got, and that's a very good example with the same significance as I have. Okay, our stores are closed, but we're going to deliver for you. Okay, I'm just going to play that very, very quickly.
On coronavirus, but obviously America's dwelling on it. You closed half your stores in China. One, why not close all the stores? Because you care tremendously about not just the workers, the baristas, but the families. And two, you've got an incredible delivery system. Why not just say, you know what, our stores are closed, but we're going to deliver to you because we're worried about corona?
Okay, so a little bit difficult to understand that man, Jim. Definitely, he speaks a lot quicker. He speaks with his mouth closed a little bit, I think, and definitely more difficult to understand him for sure. But the other man, Kevin, is not as difficult. So I'm just going to continue a little bit because there's going to be a lot of vocabulary, a lot of expressions, and I'll just play this and I'll try to focus on the difficult vocabulary at the end of Kevin's section. Okay?
Well, certainly, Jim, we've closed over half of our stores in China, and it is a very dynamic situation. We look at that each and every day. I mean, you know, certainly some of the stores we normally close over Chinese New Year. And then certainly in Hubei province, where Wuhan is, kind of the center of this coronavirus, you know, that entire province is basically closed down. But then we've been very responsible and thoughtful in working with local health officials and governments. And if there's stores, you know, perhaps tourist gatherings or near universities or hospitals, we've closed those stores. And of course, we do have our mobile order for pickup or delivery in China. And, you know, just last quarter, for example, 16% of our sales in China was through mobile ordering, and 9% of that was for delivery. So we do have delivery available. And look, we're dealing with this on a daily basis. And so when there's a concern, we will close stores, and we're going to do it responsibly and thoughtfully.
Okay, so not bad, not too difficult. I don't think there's one or two things I want to show you. Everything I think in the start is okay. Each and every day is just emphasis. So for example, you are exercising in the gym each and every day. So that just means the same every day, each day. It's just a little more emphasis. You're doing it every day. Okay. We can also say day in and day out. If you're doing something regularly all the time, you're doing it day in and day out. Very, very famous, very fluent, and very, very good. Close over Christmas. So the preposition over Christmas, over the weekend, it's like during or throughout. Okay, so there's three prepositions you can say: during, over, throughout the weekend, and that's exactly the situation here. And then I think the next one, kind of, sort of, that's another possibility. You can say kind of the center, so not exactly the center, sort of the center of this coronavirus. You know, close down is when everything's finished, everything's shut. So to close down the company is to close, obviously, completely. To close down the company. To close down the country is when you lock down the country for the coronavirus. Here we need to be careful the difference between health and healthy. So the health system is sanidad in Espanol, and a healthy person is the adjective. So there's a very, very important difference. The health system is the noun, and the adjective is healthy. So that's the big, big difference. And a lot of people are not very precise, and a lot of people make the error with these two words in particular. Okay, and if there is stories, you know, perhaps tourist gatherings, very, very important. So the verb to gather is like to collect. So for example, my table, I have my wallet, I have my phone, I have my keys. I need to gather my things, and the significance is to collect. You can gather your thoughts, and that means to collect your thoughts, to take time. But also the substantivo is a gathering, and that's typical when the family come together. So you can have a family gathering, and that's when everybody comes together for a party, for a celebration. It's a family gathering. Okay, so that's very important as well. Here we have again this, that, these, and those. So because it's in the conversation, it's those stores. And of course, we do have our mobile for pickup, which is collection. You pick up some food, you take away, you pick up. It's very, very similar. And I think that's the majority of the difficult vocabulary that we can see. Again, dealing with this on a daily basis is a very, very good expression. So you are studying hard, day in, day out, on a daily basis, each and every day. You remember the expressions, each and every day, day in and day out. So that's another possibility for this structure. Okay, and so entonces, when there's a concern, okay. Okay, and finally we will look at Carl. And again, remember beverage is a drink. Lead, you remember liderar, it's the past. All of your day parts in all of your regions in the middle of winter. I just wonder. So the verb to wonder is when you are curious and you ask yourself. Okay, you are curious. That's a very, very important structure. There is a different verb to wander, which is completely different. It's like to walk, relaxing walk, no direction. That is the verb to wander. But the verb to wonder is when you are curious. Okay, implications for the kitchen, engineering, and margin. So in business, the margin is very important, and I think most people probably understand it because it's similar in Spanish, I think. So the cost of your company, the cost of your product is €2, but you sell the product for €3. So the margin is €1. You have an extra space of €1 just for your profit. So that is the margin, okay? Of course, in society, you can say somebody is living on the margins, and that means they're living on the outside of society. Okay, so they're not in the center, they're not very they're on the margins, and maybe they're neglected a little. Okay, and then that's it. So I'll just play maybe him and Kevin. So obviously there's a lot of vocabulary, and I'll just give you the tips here for Kevin before. You know, this is in many ways the cold beverage phenomenon is one that really builds on our core platform. So plataforma, no problem. So it builds on, it constructs on, preposition on, because it's a surface you build on, the foundation. And think about this, a lot of this is cold brew. So brew is very important in English. It is the verb to create the drink, typical with tea. So you have the hot water, you put the hot water with the tea, and you permit the tea to brew. Okay, so to brew is like to generate the flavor and to generate the drink. And you can say a storm is brewing, and that means a storm is building, a storm is being created, and that's a very famous expression as well. A storm is brewing. Of course, you can say, do you want a brew? And that has the significance, do you want a drink of tea? Okay, and here is a cold brew again, and it's a name for a drink. We put into, so you put into the stores. That's not difficult, but it's just interesting with the preposition because it's in and movement to. And then the way we complemented that with, you know, things like Irish cream cold brew, and you know, that is what is driving it. So if something is driving the success, it means it's the engine. Okay, it's the factor, it's the reason for the success. It's the motivation, it's driving it. Very, very good vocabulary. We deployed. The verb to deploy is like NVR, and it's typical in the company, and the company deployed me in India, and that means the company sent me to India. You can say the army deployed the soldier to this country, and the significance is the army sent the soldier to this country as well. Okay, unlocking the growth. So to unlock the growth is a very creative structure, and the significance is to permit and to create more growth, because if the growth is locked, it's not possible to grow. But if you unlock the growth, the significance is now you have the possibility to grow more profit and more business. Okay, but it is around our core coffee and espresso beverage platforms, which is a good thing. And so we're very pleased. Again, pleased is happy, content. We normally say pleased to meet you. And I say I am very pleased with the weather, or with my project, or with the shop. And it means very happy, very content. Okay, so pleased is very important. The entire is the total beverage portfolio, and I think that is a key. You remember clave, driver, factor, motivation, reason, motive of why we're seeing customer occasions increase and traffic grow into our store. So I think that's sufficient. I'll just let it play, and I will hide my video as well, and you can see.
I've got to ask you about cold beverage, which basically led all of your day parts in all of your regions in the middle of winter. I just wonder, are there implications for kitchen engineering and margins and service time?
Well, you know, this, in many ways, the cold beverage phenomenon is one that really builds on our core platforms. You know, think about this. A lot of this is cold brew and nitro cold brew that we put into our stores. And then the way we've complemented that with, you know, things like Irish cream cold brew. You know, and that really is what's driving it. So, you know, in many ways, the fact that we've deployed nitro to all of our stores in the U.S., that's unlocking cold growth, but it's around our core coffee and espresso beverage platforms, which is a good thing. And so we're very pleased with the reception to the entire beverage portfolio, and I think that is a key driver of why we're seeing customer occasions increase and traffic growing to our stores.
Okay, so again, not too difficult to understand him. I think it's very, very clear in my opinion. And I have a temptation to show you the next part, because we have, I suppose, 15 minutes if you want. But yeah, it's a bit tricky for sure. So let me just look, I suppose, at the next section. When I look at what you're doing, and you talked about innovation, Starbucks today in terms of is very, very important. It's like in relation to, okay, very, very good structure in English. For example, in terms of the weather, when we speak about the weather, good vocabulary, very, very important, and very fluent in terms of, and very simple, but very, very good. In terms of what you're using, the physical plant, the plant is obviously in nature. You have a green plant, you have a colorful plant, but it is also like a factory. So a plant is a factory. You can say a nuclear plant, for example, in the Simpsons program, the television, Homer Simpson works in the nuclear plant, and here it is in relation to, I think, the factory. So it's a possible synonym. Listening to your work, that's possibly a plant. So it's somebody who's positioned in that to try and take information from the opposition. Okay, and you can also say to plant yourself on the sofa, and the significance is to sit on the sofa and not move. Okay, so that's possible as well. And yeah, versus a few years ago, versus I think is understandable. It's against when you first took over, so that's a bit difficult. So to take over is to take of the company, to take over. Very, very important. The significance is to take control of the company. And you can say in the car, if you're driving and you're very, very tired, your friend can suggest he or she takes over, and that means they take responsibility and they take control of the. Okay, so it's possible in lots of situations. And you can say one small company has taken over another company, so they take control and they manage the company now. Okay, this type of, this sort of 2 to 5 period where it was dead weight loss. That's a very famous business expression. So if you are a dead weight, weight is like peso, and the verb is to weigh, and the significance is you are not contributing anything. So you are a dead weight. People have to carry you, and you are not producing any benefit for anybody, is the expression. So you are a dead weight, and in this situation it's a dead weight loss. So the verb is to lose, and the substantivo is the loss. Okay, so interesting. The past is lost as well, so that's a very important family. You changed that with innovation, haven't you? Well, we have really transformed the way we drive innovation at Starbucks. And fundamentally, I tried to take, so the verb to try in the past is irregular, to take all of the lesson I learned of 32 years in the tech pronunciation, the CH, tech, it's like a K, industry, with how you innovate and constantly drive innovation that is relevant to your customers, innovation that inspires our partners, and innovation that is meaningful, which means significant. So a very meaningful message. The significance is like a powerful, important, relevant message. Okay, so we have transformed. We have gone from long cycle innovation methodologies to a mantra. So I think a mantra is similar in other languages, which means a guide or instructions. That's your mantra. It's your directions of going from idea to action in 100 days, and then learn, aprender, and adapt. And we see that across beverage, across digital, across store design. So that means in the field, in the different fields, and it's paying off. Okay, finally, we have a good expression. So to pay off means your hard work will pay off soon. And that means you will have success, you will have benefits from your hard work soon. So that's a very famous expression. Your hard work will pay off. Okay, so I think that's sufficient. And now let me just go back to the video. And I think we stopped here. Possibly, yeah, we stopped at this one. So Jim is the next one, I hope. And again, I'll just play this for 1 or 2 minutes, and then that'll be it.
I do think, Kevin, that when I look at what you're doing, you talked about innovation. At Starbucks today, in terms of the clock, in terms of when you're using their physical plant, versus a few years ago when you first took over, there was really this kind of 2 to 5 period where it was dead weight loss. You've changed that with innovation, haven't you?
Well, we've really transformed the way we drive innovation at Starbucks. And, fundamentally, I've tried to take all of the lessons I learned of 32 years in the tech industry with how you innovate and constantly drive innovation that's relevant to your customers, innovation that inspires our partners, and innovation that's meaningful to our business. So we've transformed. We've gone from long cycle innovation methodologies to a mantra of going from idea to action in 100 days, and then learn and adapt. And we see that across beverage, across digital, across store design.
That you have had to deal with, and I know you.
Okay, so I think that was perfect ending to that part. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. There's a lot of content on this Facebook page. There's a lot of videos. This morning we had another free class, and today it's just an example of business vocabulary. You can see here the notes, and hopefully you could follow the vocabulary during the class. Thank you for paying attention a little. Thank you for watching, and hopefully it's useful a little for you. And we will continue. We have a class in the morning, but that is a special group for, I think, level C1. But anyway, if you want to join one of the groups, you are welcome to contact us and try to join one of the groups. And we have lots of possibilities as well. Okay, so everything is free. And again, I'll just leave the contact details here if you want to make a small contribution. it's a possibility, but everything is free, and it's a good opportunity for me to use Facebook to promote and to teach for free, and hopefully you can get a benefit from some of the classes as well. So there's a lot of variety, a lot of different things, and again, there's the information. If you want to leave a small donation, you can with Bizum, the mobile phone number. Revolut is the second possibility, or directly by the bank transfer. Okay, so there are the three possibilities. If you want to make a small contribution to support, it would be very, very positive and very good. Okay, so thank you again. Have a very good day, and hopefully Facebook was functioning good and there was no problem with the connection, and hopefully we can continue with classes like this. And please let me know your feedback, tell me your opinion, and hopefully I can adapt and change some of the content for what you prefer. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great Friday, happy weekend, and hopefully you can do something similar, like free classes, or help somebody in your job to give them something that you can for free if possible. Okay, thank you, and talk to you soon.